This bone is 20,000 years old, and it's about to change everything you thought you knew about the history of mathematics.
What if I told you that Africans were doing advanced mathematics 20,000 years ago, before writing, before agriculture, before civilization as we know it? In 1960, a Belgian geologist discovered the Ishango Bone in the mountains of Central Africa that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the history of mathematics. It was a small bone, barely 4 inches long, covered in mysterious notches. But this wasn't just any bone. This was the Ishango Bone, and it might be humanity's oldest mathematical artifact. And it came from Africa. Our story begins in 1960, in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. Belgian geologist Jean de Heinzelin was conducting excavations at Ishango, a small fishing community on the shores of Lake Edward, right on the border between Congo and Uganda. The site itself was already fascinating. It was the remains of a settlement that had been buried by a volcanic eruption around 20,000 years ago, preserving everything like an African Pompeii. Among the tools, harpoons, and remnants of daily life, de Heinzelin found something peculiar: a dark brown bone, about 10 centimeters long, with a piece of quartz crystal fixed to one end. At first, it looked like just another tool handle, but then he noticed the markings. The bone was covered in carefully carved notches, arranged in 3 distinct columns. These weren't random scratches from use or decoration. These marks were deliberate. They were intentional. They meant something that de Heinzelin had discovered what many now consider to be the oldest mathematical tool in human history. So what exactly is the Ishango bone? Physically, it's a fibula bone, probably from a baboon, measuring just 10 centimeters in length. On one end, there's a small piece of quartz crystal, suggesting it might have been used as a cutting or engraving tool, or perhaps even for writing. But it's the markings that make this artifact extraordinary. The bone contains 3 columns of notches, each arranged in specific patterns. And when mathematicians analyzed these patterns, they found something stunning. Column 1 contains the numbers 11, 13, 17, and 19. Notice something? These are all prime numbers. Prime numbers are only divisible by 1 in themselves, and discovering this pattern requires sophisticated mathematical thinking. Column 2 shows 11, 21, 19, and 9. At first glance, it seems random, but look closer. 11 plus 9 equals 20. 21 minus 1 equals 20. This column appears to demonstrate addition and subtraction, and possibly the concept of base 10 arithmetic. Column 3 contains 3, 6, 4, 8, 10, 5, and 5. Again, patterns emerge. Groups of numbers that double, that add to 10, that show multiplication relationships. This wasn't just counting. This was mathematics. Let's dig deeper into what makes the Ishango bone so revolutionary. The presence of prime numbers is particularly significant. Prime numbers are one of the fundamental building blocks of mathematics, and recognizing them requires abstract mathematical thinking. The ancient Greeks are usually credited with discovering prime numbers around 300 BCE through the work of Euclid. But the Ishango bone suggests that Africans were working with prime numbers nearly 20,000 years earlier. That's not a typo. 20,000 years earlier. Some researchers, like Claudia Zaslavsky in her groundbreaking book Africa Counts, argue that the Ishango bone might be evidence of a base 10 number system. Base 10 is what we use today, counting by tens. The patterns on the bone show groupings that add up to 10 and multiples of 10, suggesting its creators understood this system. Even more fascinating is the possibility that the Ishango bone was used for astronomical calculations. The notches could represent a lunar calendar, tracking the phases of the moon. Ancient peoples needed to track time for planting crops, predicting floods, and organizing society. The total number of notches on one side of the bone is 60. Another side has 48 notches. Some researchers believe these numbers relate to lunar months. A lunar phase cycle is approximately 29.5 days, and 2 lunar months equal about 59 days. The precision is remarkable, but perhaps the most important thing about the Ishango bone isn't any single interpretation. It's the fact that it proves beyond doubt that ancient Africans were engaging in complex, abstract mathematical thinking during the Stone Age. So who were the people who created the Ishango bone? The archaeological evidence paints a picture of a sophisticated society. The settlement at Ishango wasn't a temporary camp. People lived there for generations. They were hunter-gatherers, but they weren't primitive. They fished in Lake Edward using sophisticated harpoons. They had tools made from bone, stone, and wood. They created art and jewelry. And clearly, they had mathematicians. The population of this region during this period would have been part of what anthropologists call the later Stone Age cultures of Central Africa. These were the ancestors of modern sub-Saharan Africans, and they were far more advanced than we've given them credit for. Think about what life was like 20,000 years ago. There were no cities, no writing systems, no metal tools. And yet, someone sat down with a bone and a sharp tool and carved mathematical relationships into it. Why? Maybe they were counting fish catches. Maybe they were tracking lunar cycles for ritual purposes. Maybe they were teaching mathematics to others. We may never know for certain. But what we do know is that this level of abstract thinking, this mathematical curiosity, existed in Africa long before it appeared anywhere else. The Ishango Bone forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about the history of mathematics and human intelligence. For too long, the story of mathematics has been told as beginning in ancient Mesopotamia with the Sumerians around 3000 BCE, then moving to Egypt, then Greece, then Europe. But the Ishango Bone is 17,000 years older than Sumerian mathematics. It predates the earliest known writing by about 15,000 years. It's older than agriculture itself. This matters because it challenges a deeply problematic narrative that has persisted for centuries. The idea that Africa contributed nothing to mathematics, science, or technology until contact with other civilizations. The Ishango Bone proves this narrative is not just wrong, but absurdly wrong. When the bone was first discovered, many Western scholars were skeptical. Some suggested it was just decorative. Others claimed the patterns were coincidental. Some even argued that the people who made it couldn't have understood what they were creating. But as more research has been conducted, the mathematical sophistication of the Ishango Bone has become undeniable. It's now housed in the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences in Brussels, where it's recognized as one of the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century. And here's something else to consider. The Ishango Bone is just one artifact from one site. How many other mathematical tools, astronomical calendars, and counting systems existed in ancient Africa that we haven't discovered yet? How many were lost to time, decay, and the ravages of tropical climates? The Ishango Bone might not be an exception. It might be a window into a much larger tradition of African mathematical thinking that we're only beginning to understand. So what's the legacy of the Ishango Bone? First and foremost, it's a reminder that human genius has no geographic boundaries. Mathematical thinking didn't emerge in one place and spread to others. It emerged independently in multiple places, and Africa was at the forefront. The bone also reminds us that the history we're taught is often incomplete. Archaeology continues to reveal new evidence that challenges old assumptions. Every year, new discoveries in Africa push back the timeline of human achievement. For African students and scholars, the Ishango Bone is a source of pride and inspiration. It proves that their ancestors were innovators, thinkers, and mathematicians. It provides a connection to a deep intellectual heritage that colonialism tried to erase. And for all of us, it's a humbling reminder of how much we still don't know. If a small fishing village on the shores of Lake Edward 20,000 years ago produced mathematical thinkers sophisticated enough to work with prime numbers and lunar calendars, what else were ancient peoples capable of? The next time someone suggests that advanced mathematics is a recent invention or that it came from only one part of the world, remember the Ishango Bone. Remember that 20,000 years ago, someone in Central Africa sat down and created what might be humanity's first calculator. The Ishango Bone is just one of countless African inventions and innovations that have been overlooked or forgotten by history. In our next video, we'll explore another incredible African innovation that changed the world.
If you learned something new today, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next incredible story from Africa's forgotten scientific history.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
In the next video.